And the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Biggs, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Strzok, you've worked as a criminal investigator for at least 20 years, isn't that right?
National security investigator, primarily CI work, which within the Bureau we differentiate criminal, which is...
But you're familiar with criminal investigations,
yes, sir.
Correct? And you understand that as you're aggregating evidence, you're looking for a couple areas. Number one, you're looking to see if there's an act, the actus reus of a crime, right?
Yes.
You're also looking for culpable mental state of a crime, right?
Yes.
You have to demonstrate the culpable mental state if you're going to bring a case forward, right? Intentional, knowingly, reckless, etc., right?
Almost always, yes.
Yeah, unless there's some kind of strict liability, right? And you'd agree that short of some statement against interest, most of the time, the culpable mental state of either intentional or knowingly, that's usually done through circumstantial evidence, correct?
I hesitate to generalize.
Trust me,
I don't know that I can answer
Trust
that
me, it
question,
is.
sir.
It is, because short of someone making a statement against interest, you've got to prove that they intended not only every element of the offense, right, or knowingly did that offense. That has to be proved, and oftentimes it's by circumstantial evidence, which, by the way, there's a jury instruction typically that goes forward that says there's no qualitative difference between circumstantial evidence and direct evidence. You'd agree with that statement, right?
So I'm not an attorney. I would.
Well, you've been in the court many times, right?
Well,
you sure sound like an attorney sometimes,
very
right?
educated recitations of legal terms that I don't have the education to be able to respond.
Okay, well, trust me on that. There's a jury instruction that says...
If you're representing to me that's accurate, I will
right.
accept that.
Right, and then this morning, you said, and then this has been a theme, and I don't know how many umpteen times you said it, but I wrote down the one quote you gave to Chairman Goodlatte. You said, quote, "My text messages are not indicative of bias," close quote. Do you still hold to that position?
I do.
Okay. Now, as we go forward here, when the FBI is trying to put together circumstantial evidence of a culpable mental state, they're looking at things such as text messages. They're looking at things such as communications between people for whatever reason, right? You'd agree with that?
I would.
Yeah. And so that indicates someone's mental state that you're going to take before a jury where you're going to say, beyond a reasonable doubt, we can demonstrate either intentional or knowing by this series, this accumulation of circumstantial evidence, right?
Rephrase the question, please, sir.
Okay, this is not hard. So when you're trying to prove a culpable mental state,
yes.
Most of it's coming from circumstantial evidence, very rarely, unless you've got a confession, right?
Yes.
And so you're taking accumulation of various pieces of evidence, and you're saying,
yes.
Look, this adds up to intentional or knowingly. Right?
Agreed.
So one of the things that's been made evident here is that your statements and your communications with Ms. Page, it wasn't a one-off. It wasn't two. It wasn't three. This is a whole series. It's a whole series that goes on not for a day or a week. This goes on for a long period of time. Is that not true?
It is true.
Yeah. And so when people begin to say, was there bias on the part of Peter Strzok, they're not saying, oh, gee, on this one, just on August 8th. They're going for a whole accumulation and aggregation of various statements that you made and that Ms. Page made as well. So that leads us to the IG statement. So when the Inspector General comes in and I ask him the question, I said, look, you've said regarding Mr. Strzok and Ms. Page, you didn't find documentary testimony evidence that they had improper considerations, including political bias, directly affecting. I said, that's directly affecting, because you said they weren't the sole decision makers. I said, did they indirectly affect it? He said, yeah. Why? Because he said, you were the lead investigator of the Hillary Clinton. You were the liaison, if you will. You were the flow of information from the investigative team that you've said there's lots of them, and I kind of actually sketched a kind of a Venn diagram how this works, organizational chart as it works, as you were describing it earlier today. You were the gatekeeper of information. Lisa Page was providing counsel to Andrew McCabe. On the Russian investigation, you were the head guy. You're the head guy. Now we have accumulation of biased information that indicates some kind of mental state of bias. And at the other end of this, we've got it that you're the head guy on these. That's what the Inspector General said under oath in testimony not too many weeks ago.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, if I may respond, I think
There's no
some
question
inaccurate-
before you.
I want to correct some inaccurate things you said.
I didn't say anything inaccurate.
Oh, you
There's
did.
nothing
I-
to
Let
correct.
The witness needs to be able to answer the
And you're
question.
out of order.
The
You've been
witness
out of order
needs to be
all day.
answered the question.
Mr. Chairman, when aspersions are cast on the witness,
no
you're to be able.
aspersions cast.
Oh, there were, sir.
Well, you should allow the witness to answer.
Yeah.
Everyone,
Why are you afraid to let the
everyone will
witness answer the
suspend.
question?
Everyone will suspend, and the time of the gentleman has expired, and the chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Grothman, for 5 minutes.
Sir, may I respond to the gentleman who just
No,
spoke?
you may not. The gentleman from Wisconsin.